Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
Hey, thanks for coming this morning. I'm feeling excited to be here. I think it's some of it, at least some of it is a new haircut and a new jacket. Feeling good. Thanks for being here. Genuinely excited that you're here. I wanted to open with a question, which is just simply, how's your New Year's resolution going? Oh, that old thing? Are you still on track? How many of you do New Year's resolutions? No, this is for the real question. How many of you do a New Year's resolution? A little higher. You don't have to be ashamed. Gosh dang. You're like, this is a setup. Trav's coming for me. You would see the start of a year as just an amazing opportunity to shift something. How many of you, not just planning, but how many of you set goals for the new year? Great. How many of you gave up on that a long time ago? And you no longer try to shift anything at the start of the year? I find myself somewhere in between. And I think no matter what side of the fence you come down on, either pro-resolution or kind of anti, doing that, I think we're all very aware of the reality that it is very easy to start something or to say something, and it is very difficult to sustain something. No matter what side of the fence you come down on, I think we can all agree on that. It's much easier to say something, much easier to start something than it is to sustain something. I think that's why some of us don't even bother to start something, because we know how difficult it is to finish, right? I mean, it's so much easier to have a wedding than it is to have a marriage. Can I get an amen? I don't know, but I've heard that it's difficult to have a kid. It really is. I'm sure it is. But to raise a child, that's like a whole nother, right? We can all start and we can all say yes, but not all of us can finish. We can all say yes, but it's difficult to sustain our yes. Am I right? Without it starts a yes, and then it turns into a yeah, we're doing this. And then it turns into a yeah. And then it just slides, doesn't it? Until it's like a no, not doing that. I know what it is. And of course, I'm talking about a sacrificial yes. I know what it is to sustain a yes towards ESPN. I know what it is to sustain a yes towards snowboarding. I know what it is to sustain a yes towards cereal at 10 p.m. I know what it is to sustain a yes to holiday or vacation every year, but I'm talking about a sacrificial yes, a yes that costs us something, a yes that requires something from us. And I want to come, if you have got a Bible, turn with me to Matthew 20. And as we make our way through Matthew 20, I want to kind of fly over this chapter together, but I also want to frame the chapter with this question: how do we sustain a life of humbly serving God and others? How do we sustain our yes? Cassie just invited us to sign up to serve family and kids. Brian just asked us to sign up and serve to protect this place. Mike just asked us to sign up to be a part of community, to be a part of a house, to be a part of a class. And it is important to know how to sign up. It's important to know how to sign up. It's important to know how to start and where to start. But it's more important that we know how to finish, because some of us won't even start unless we know or have some sense that we can sustain that yes. Again, really key that you start serving. Really key that you know how to get going. But how do we sustain our yes? What will fuel us as we follow the God that said it's better that we serve than to be served? As we follow Jesus, who came not to be served, but to serve, how do we sustain a life of sacrificial giving? Not just in the church. The church is the least of your concerns. How do you sustain a life of giving in your marriage? Not how do you say I do, but how do you keep saying I do? Not to pronounce those vows on that day, but to live those things out. Where does the fuel come for that? In the classroom, in our friendships, at work. For some of you, the year has started and you're wondering if you're going to make it to the end of the year. How will you sustain that work? When you feel like you're giving more than you're getting, how do you keep giving? That's the question. That's the framework for this chapter. And I want to ask you 4 questions this morning as we move through Matthew 20. The first question is, what do you deserve? What do you deserve? How you answer this question will determine if you serve. It'll also determine how long you serve. And no one sustains a life of humble service without regularly and repeatedly answering this question. Matthew 20, starting in verse 1, for the kingdom of heaven, this is Jesus speaking, for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day, and he sent them into his vineyard. About 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace, and they're doing nothing, and he told them, you also go work in my vineyard, and I'll pay you whatever is right. So they went. And he went out again about noon, and about 3 in the afternoon, and he did the same thing. And then at about 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around, and he asked them, why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing? And they said, no one hired us. And he said to them, you also go and work in my vineyard. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the workers, pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first. The workers who were hired at 5 in the afternoon came, and they each received a denarius. So when those who came, who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. These who were hired last, they worked only 1 hour. They said, and you've made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them, I am not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I'm generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. I've had to teach my kids a number of things. I've never had to teach them to see and spot what is fair. I've never sat with Finley and been like, hey, so what you're looking at here is something that's unfair. And when you see this, you're going to want to throw a flag. That flag is, this isn't fair. I've never taught them that. I didn't have to. I'm shocked at how many times my kids still come to me saying, that's not fair, because I never once have promised to be fair. That's never been my New Year's resolution. I've never once told my kids, hey, listen, I'm looking to be fair, so I want you to hold me accountable to that. So every time they come to me and they're like, that's not fair, I'm like, yeah, I never promised to be that. I've never told you that that's what I want to be in our house. Yet they keep insisting that this is like my chief aim in life. Like I want nothing more in life than to be fair. You're born with a deep sense of justice because you were created in the image of God. A deep sense of, hey, wait a second. That doesn't, now it's a little bit inconsistent. That's what I'll say. Because when it comes to what's done to us, we want what's fair. When it comes to what we do to others, we want grace, right? So there's some inconsistencies with it. But nonetheless, you're born with some ability to discern what's fair. And Jesus, with this story, is trying to help a group of people who are looking at life through the lens of fair. And he's trying to give them something of like grace goggles. He's trying to help them see the world through the lens of grace, which turns out that unmerited favor doesn't come as naturally to us. Am I right? How many of you, you're born with a desire for fair. You'll spend a lifetime trying to get your head around grace. It's difficult to receive and to understand and participate in grace. And Jesus is trying to help people who are seeing life through the lens of fair grasp the grace of God. And one of the things that you have to take away from this parable is to understand that this desire for what is fair is always there, but it begins to increase as we work and serve. Your desire for what is fair is always there, but it increases as you start to work and serve. Because, simply put, our effort should equal something. Am I right? An equation starts to form. I did this and I should get this. They did that and they should get that. A formula starts to form in us as we begin to work and serve. It's always there, but it begins to increase as we give our lives away. The vineyard in this passage, and usually the vineyard in Scripture, when you read the Scriptures, usually the vineyard represents Israel. And the workers that got there early, the guys who started the shift at 6 a.m., well, that's God's people. They've been working and waiting since the start of the day. Those that are getting in late and are getting paid the same are the Gentiles, the tax collectors, the sinners. Matthew himself, who records this gospel, is one of those guys who started his shift at 5. And he got grafted in, and he's enjoying all the same benefits of salvation. He's enjoying all the same things that God's people were offered. And this was frustrating to those who saw life through the lens of fair, because they haven't worked nearly as long and they're enjoying all the same benefits. And the workers who got there early are, in my opinion, as I read it, rightly upset, offended. They thought they deserved more. I deserve more than this. And this is interesting for us because our desire to have can quickly become a desire for others not to have. I don't know when that happens, but it does. What happens for you when people begin to receive all the same payoffs without putting in the same work? What happens for you? At Radiant, some of you have been working so hard to form deep, meaningful relationships, like you've really been putting in the work. What happens when someone waltzes in the new year and quickly and easily they have the relationships that you've been working years to have? What happens for you? What happens at work when that person you've been slaving away? What happens for you when that person who's recently been hired ends up out in front? Would you close your eyes for a sec? I believe the Lord would ask us the same questions he asked those laborers in this passage. I feel that the Lord would come to us right now and say to you, have I been unfair? Have I been unfair to you? Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? I believe God would say, haven't I fulfilled my word to you? Haven't I been faithful to my promise in your life? I believe the Lord would ask the question, don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? I believe that God would say over us, are you sure you want to tell me what to do? I believe the Lord would ask us, are you envious because I am generous? Do you begrudge my generosity? Church, we never deserve more than to serve God and to serve others. We never deserve more than to serve. We're not entitled to something more than faithfully serving the God that we know and the people He's put in our lives. We never outgrow a life of service. And the person who has a sustained yes understands this. If you start to measure with fair, you're not going to make it. We have to grasp the grace of God towards us in order to sustain a life of making sacrifices for others. We don't agree on much as Christians. And there's a lot that we disagree on. But one thing that we all agree on is that we don't want what we deserve. We got together. And we argued about everything. But at the end of it all, we all circled up and said, you know what, as a community, let's not get what we deserve, okay? We gave up on what we deserve a long time ago. And if we're going to make it, it's going to be because grace, unmerited favor from God. suspend your tendency to create formulas. My effort equals. Receive afresh the grace of God in order to sustain your yes. We always deserve to serve. We don't ever deserve anything more than to serve. The second question, if you're going to make it, have a sustained yes, is how do you see God? How do you see God? No people group has ever risen above their view of God. The God you see is the Christian you'll be. The most important thing about you, Tozer would remind us, is your view of God. Let's read on in verse 17. Now Jesus was going to Jerusalem. Why is he headed to Jerusalem? What's he headed to do? Well, let's read on. Well, you were like, okay. He's on his way to Jerusalem to die. And on the way, he took 12 aside, and he said to them, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked, flogged, crucified. On the third day, he will be raised to life. Are you primarily serving God? Are you primarily saying yes to him? Or are you in touch with the very real ways that God is serving you? Are you doing stuff for God and living out of touch with what God has done for you? The person who can pull off a sustained yes, who can finish, the person who can live a life of humble service, is in touch with the ways that God is serving them. And if you've stopped serving, it's probably because you're out of touch with the idea or the reality that God is serving you. And you're mostly thinking about what you're doing. And you're not reflecting on what God has done. The lifting that Jesus has done. There's this tendency in me as a pastor, because I work here. And there's this tendency, at times, it's a subtle thought that creeps in. It's like, I'm doing a lot, God, with the little you've gave us. It's tough to take your calls down here. We're doing a lot here with the scraps you've given us. Or to use the words of Rich Mullins, it's hard as you're up there playing hard to get. And it's subtle, and it'll just creep in, but what begins to happen is our Christian service is driven by a really low view of God or some attempt to bail him out of the mess he got himself in. And if we're not careful, our view of God begins to shrink as we serve. And the person who has a life of sustained service in their marriage or at work is saying something like this. This is what they're rehearsing. Jesus, you suffered. Jesus, if we're carrying a couch together, you're carrying the heavier end. Jesus, you paid. Jesus, you initiated. Jesus, you're planning. Jesus, you're dying. Jesus, you're gifting. Jesus, you're granting. Jesus, you're working. Jesus, you're serving. And they're living in touch with what Christ has done. You paid the debt I couldn't pay, lived the life that I couldn't live, died the death that I deserved. You called me. You found me. You cleansed me. You're patient with me. You're for me. This is what the person who has a sustained life of service is rehearsing. Not what you're doing and what it deserves. You're rehearsing what Christ has done and the ways, the very real ways in which he's serving you. Are you aware of the very real ways right now, not just thousands of years ago, but the very real ways in which God is serving you right now. You'll have to be in order to sustain your yes over the year. The third question is, how do you define greatness? How you would describe God is ultimate, but how you would define greatness is also really important. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons and kneeling down asked Jesus for a favor. "What is it you want?" he asked. And she said, "Grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right hand and the other at your left in your kingdom." And Jesus says, "Well, you don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink?" "We can," they answered. And Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from the cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. They're ticked. Like, seriously, guys, you have your mom? You had your mom come? Why's your mom here? We're grown men. Why's your mom here? And Jesus called them together and he said, "Hey, guys, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles, they lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Hey, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must become your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave." What? "Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." What do you think it means to be great? What position is that on the field? If you want to be great, that's great. Jesus has no problem with that. His problem is your definition of greatness. He wouldn't rebuke you for your desire to be great. He would probably rebuke your definition of greatness. And that's what he's doing here. Hey, guys, hold up a sec. You know the Gentiles, how they lord it over people? Well, you're in the Lord's army now, and it works different here. And Jesus is saying here, no matter how great you become in the kingdom, it'll never mean anything more than serving God and serving others. If you're given a position, it's not so that you can be served. If you're given a position, it's in order to serve. If you're given a position, it's not so that you can get. If you're given a position, it's so that you can give. That's what he's laying out clearly. Because we don't believe in the ladder, do we? We believe in the cross. The symbol of Christianity is not a ladder. The symbol of Christianity is the cross. And that's what we believe in, and that's what we're banking on. What do you think it means to be great? And where did you get that definition? Because you'll never move beyond the call to serve. Just settle with it right now. Just come to terms with it right now. I'll never do more than serve. Jesus himself, the Son of God, did not come to be served, but to serve. How do you find greatness? Like a lowness? Sir, hey, I had a great day today. Why did you have a great day today? I served. Is that how you would define greatness? Lowliness, service, lastness, momness. Lastly, to sustain a life of service, I just think you need to be open to interruptions. Are you open to interruptions? Henry Nouwen, he's like a famous Christian thinker, philosopher, had this pretty famous conversation, which helped him think of interruptions as something more than a bother. And he wrote this: While visiting the University of Notre Dame, where I had been a teacher for a few years, I met an older, experienced professor who had spent most of his life there. And while we strolled over the beautiful campus, he said with a certain melancholy in his voice, "You know, my whole life I've been complaining that my work was constantly interrupted until I discovered that my interruptions were my work." Sometimes in the desire to be productive, we usually forget about people. Not so with the God we serve. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." And the crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet. Hey, he's busy right now. But they shouted all the louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." And Jesus stopped and he called them. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. "Lord," they answered, "we want our sight." And Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. And immediately they received their sight and followed him. I love this because after talking to his disciples about power and how power should be used, he just goes and does it. He uses his power in the right way to serve people. He's heading to Jerusalem. He's just told his disciples he's going to die. He sets his face like flint to head to the cross. He's on his way to the cross. And there's somebody crying out, making noise, or screaming, "Have mercy on me, have mercy on me." Jesus is headed towards a triumphal entry, a parade in his honor. The Candy Cane Lane parade is about to kick off, and he's like Santa in the thing, right? He's got somewhere to be. He's got something to do. He's got something to do this week. What's your week look like? Have you started to think about it? Oh, I got a big one. If I take Monday off, it's just going to make things worse. I got a lot to do in 4 days. Hey, Jesus, what's your week like this week? Oh, I'm going to divide human history into BC and AD with a little event right there in the middle. What's your week look like? Well, I got some things to do, like change the world. With what? A first century torture device. Oh, there's some things on his mind. Oh, he's got some stuff he's got to do. And he takes a call. He takes a call. And he answers that call with a question. What do you want me to do for you? What in the world? Who, with the week that Jesus is about to have, takes a call and answers the call with the question, is there anything I can do for you? You know what the first question is to go when I get busy? Is there anything I can do for you? You know what the question is that I haven't asked God or my wife in probably a decade? Is there anything I can do for you? Who asked that question? It's unreal. Everyone else, there's a bunch of noise. Everyone else hears it, and they're like, he's busy. He's headed to the parade, the one everyone's been waiting for. He can't answer that call. Shh. Stop. He's got places to be. He's got things to do. Just no. Hey, what can I do for you? Because even as he set his face like flint towards the cross, he hasn't forgotten why he's doing what he's doing. And it's for people. He remembers that the reason he's going to the cross is people. People harassed. People helpless. The very people screaming out to him, have mercy on me. That's why he's making his way to the cross. He doesn't get so consumed with the task that he forgets why he's doing what he's doing. It's people in desperate need of healing and wholeness. In order to get it done, he doesn't forget why he's doing it. And the person who has a sustained yes, the person who finishes, I think is open to these interruptions and doesn't miss the point, why we're doing what we're doing. Would you stand with me, and worship team, would you come? We can so quickly, as we make our way through a list, and so quickly as we make our way through a busy week, forget why we're doing what we're doing, and more importantly, who we're doing it for. I want to invite you to the table this morning, and we take communion in remembrance, and we remember Christ and what he's done. And if you're here and you believe in Jesus and you believe in his work, then this meal, this table's open for you. But as you come, I just want you to reflect on these. What do you deserve? What do you deserve? What are you entitled to? Who is God? And what has he done? What is greatness defined by God? And aren't we so thankful that he was open to interruptions? Aren't we so thankful that he heard us screaming on the side of the road and stopped and was attentive to our needs, responded to us?
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find. Though I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And I